let's go ahead and watch these next two videos. I am going to warn you ahead of time that there is some graphic language in these, both of these videos. The first one is a lady in line at the store berating a Hispanic customer, and the other one is it's hashtag This Is 2016 Asian Americans Respond, and so let's take a look.
Like everybody else did. It starts back there. And it don't bother me if I say it, and I don't care if everybody hears me. I think everybody here probably feels the same damn way I do. Thank you. Right. Let's go back to wherever the fuck you come from, lady. Y'all think you... Hey, tell them to go back where they belong. If they can't act like, they come here to live, then act like everybody else. Get in the back of the line like everybody else does. And be somebody. And that's the way I look at it. You're a nobodies. Just because you come from another country, it don't make you nobody. You're nobody, as far as I'm concerned. Probably on welfare. The taxpayers probably paid for all that stuff. It's true. They probably paid. We probably paid for every bit of that stuff. You know that? Probably all the food they get and everything else. I'm sorry, but that's the way I feel.
I say sorry.
That's okay. Speak English. You're in America. If you don't know it, learn it. And I'm sorry that I'm that way, but you all need to realize you're not the only ones around here.
Well-dressed woman on Upper East Side, annoyed by her stroller, yells, "Go back to China. Go back to your fucking country. This is 2016. So I wrote that tweet just after my family and I had that encounter with this woman. And later I wrote an open letter to her that ran on the New York Times website, and we put it on the front page of the newspaper. We asked other Asian Americans to share their own experiences with racial prejudice and hashtag it just like I did, This is 2016. A lot of people did.
So I was leaving the stage door of Mamma Mia, where I had been working for several years, and was talking to this wonderful, lovely Midwest couple. And after our conversation, they look at me and say, "When did you move to this country? Your accent is almost perfect." And I took a breath, looked right at them and said, "Yeah, I was born in Atlanta, Georgia, y'all. So, awkward."
My history teacher asked in class, "Is your Chinese name Ching Chang Wang?" I heard all Chinese names sound like that. Hashtag This is 2016.
A man yelled across the street to another group of men, "Hey, you have an egg roll coming your way." This is 2016.
Where do I start? How about this one? Once asked, quote, "Is your peripheral vision as good as mine? Or better, 'cause you know, your eyes." This is 2016.
Is it true that Asian women have slanted vaginas? This is 2016.
Dating as an Asian male, seeing profiles listing preference as, quote, all-American, getting replies like, quote, no chinks. This is 2016.
So this happens in the back of a lift pool. I get inside the car and the guy starts asking me, "Where are you from?" Dreaded question. And I say, "I was born in the States, but I lived in Korea for a bit." And he says, "Wow, your English is so good." And I say, "Well, I said I was born in the States." And he keeps pushing, saying, "But you're so articulate. Your English is impeccable." At this point, I am about ready to tell the Lyft driver to tell this guy to just jump off onto the West Side Highway.
When I was in the U.S. Army, our drill sergeants used to tell us that we're not white, black, yellow, or brown, that we're all Army green. Yet when a fellow soldier called me Private Ching Chang, when a drill sergeant told another fellow soldier that she would kick her butt back to China, and by the way, she's from California, we had to fight to convince them that we were as American as they were, willing to fight, bleed, and die for this country, yet that was the struggle we took on.
Too many for one tweet. And some, living in New York City, I still regularly get, "Go back to China." "Hello, China doll." "Konnichiwa." This is 2016.
In college, a roommate's girlfriend, she asked me if I spoke Asian. She also asked if I saw everything in widescreen.
Last month, I watched a white man who I consider to be progressive pull back his eyelids to describe Asian people.
When I was 7, my father had to explain the word chink to me because a neighbor had spray painted it on our front steps. I'm Korean.
Late night, packed subway. I brush up against a guy and he screams at me, "Go fucking make my Chinese food." And like, I don't even like to cook.
My brother comes home and tells me his boss at school calls him Bruce Lee and Tinkerbell, and his friends started to do the same. They were his friends for his whole life.
About 2 weeks ago, a New York City subway conductor intentionally slammed the door on my ribs and said to me, "You'll be deported soon." This is 2016.
So Monday at work, I was reading this MarQ article, and as I was reading that, the timing was too perfect. I got a series of texts from my sister. She was supposed to meet me later. The texts read, "I just left and filed a report with the police. Walking to the train and this guy follows me and says, 'Hey, I know you. Where are you going? Hey, you fucking Asian chink. Don't walk away from me. I got a $50 bill. I can buy you for the night.' Grab them by the Chinese pussy." After reading that, I tweeted, "I received these texts from my younger sister as I was reading your article, and we're first-generation Filipino Americans. Hashtag this is 2016.
First of all, I'm a physician, and I've gotten the chance to work in all different parts of the country. The one thing I've noticed, though, regardless of where I work, is that I always seem to be encountering the same question, being, where in the world did you ever learn to speak English so well? If I wasn't looking at you or speaking to you on the phone, I would never think you were Oriental. The question never failed to take me aback, considering the fact that I went to school in Boston, I went to school in Buffalo, New York. So the first thing I ever think of myself as is as a New Yorker, not as an Oriental.
Quote, "Your people are all like this. Man at JFK after I asked him to unblock the security machine. He was playing on his phone.
I went to my college's financial aid office for a scholarship problem. Explained in detail. Guy, quote, "So, are you an international student?"
Doorman, assuming that I'm a delivery guy because I'm holding a plastic bag. This is 2016.
As an Asian American born in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, I sympathize with your situation. Recently, I was walking with my husband of 20 years. He happens to be Jewish. He said to me, "I never realized people look at us differently." And I was shocked. I said, "Are you kidding? Of course we are different. I am different. I am not white. I am a person of color." And the other night at the Taylor Mac concert, Taylor Mac told all the white people in the center section of the audience to go to mimic a whitey-flighty to allow people of color to enter the more privileged seats. My husband got up, he turned to me and said, "Aren't you coming with me?" And I said, "No, I'm not white. I am a person of color."
A former boss said she always hires Asians because they make the best workers. This is 2016.
Colleagues have asked, without malice, "When does your work visa end?" I was born here. This is 2016.
So this happened in Brooklyn. I was walking to the subway, and approaching me, there are two tall, young white guys, and they stopped me. They start speaking gibberish and sing-song, and I didn't quite know what was going on. And then I heard it, "Chinny China, go back to China." And then I knew it was about race. It was not a good feeling, but in a way it was kind of a relief because, we named it, and at least we're talking about it.
Wow. So I'm imagining that watching those brought up a lot of feelings. I know for me, the one that really got me and actually brought tears to my eyes was that woman saying to that other woman, "You're nobody," over and over, "You're nobody." And thinking how deep does that go into someone when you hear something like that? So, what are other people thinking and feeling? Because this is happening. It's 2016. It's 2017. This is happening.
Well, one thing I would say, we have so many questions and ideas that are on the in the air now, and we can't address every one of them, but I imagine that we all can think about them. It gives us a place to start to think. One thing I saw there actually reminded me of something I haven't thought of in years, and that is when I was in my 20s, I moved to DC and I had a job working as a receptionist for a radio station. And I do remember, it was actually one of the salespeople that used to call the station. He'd say, "I never can tell," what did he say? "I can't tell the difference. I can't tell whether you girls down there are white or black." That's what it is. Because basically I didn't speak in the way that he anticipated. It was a so-called black-oriented radio station, which played mostly soul and R&B music. But everybody that worked there wasn't black. It just happened to be a black-oriented radio station. But he said, "I never can tell." So it was because my voice did not replicate what he considered to be a black way of speaking. And it was funny then, but you look at those things as the things that sort of grow, and it's just like they grow on you over in the course of your life. You have experiences like that when someone says it when you're small, and maybe at the time that he said it, it may have been that I even thought that that was a compliment, that I didn't speak like a black person, or that I didn't have what would be a traditional, stereotypic way of speaking. I conceptualize and evaluate those things a lot differently now, and it comes with the age and maturity and understanding where people are coming from and what kind of inferences they're saying. Because underneath it is he really wanted to ask me out on the phone, as a result of talking with me on the phone, but he couldn't tell whether I was a white girl yet or not, for sure. You know what I mean? And that really was the basis of his comment. But so you learn to read those things over time, and then you become in such a way where you can call them out immediately. And then people say, "Well, you're overly sensitive about race." Well, it's that lifetime of experience with racism that allows you to identify it and address it in the moment. And I think when someone says something even innocently, there may not be any, no intent to do you harm, nothing mean meant by it, just maybe not an understanding in the moment of sort of the dynamic of that exchange. And so we say, this leads back to this idea of calling people, for instance, the word which I generally don't like to say, which is the N word, but I think sometimes for the purpose of conversation, we use it. People have a lot of talk they say about, well, you call yourselves that word. You call yourselves, we hear you calling yourself. Why is it a problem when I call you nigger or nigga or whatever? And there's all kinds of dialogues online about the different ways. And I've even had kids, I walked into a after-school program a few years ago, and there was some of the teenagers were there before. And as when I walked into the room, I heard one teenager across the room calling the other person nigger. So, but I was the only black person in the room. So she was talking to another, in this case, I think the two teenagers happened to be Latino. And I said, "Beg your pardon, what did you say over there?" Because I didn't, I was just kind of new coming in. And she says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean anything. That's what we say all the time." And in fact, it turns out that it is true that a lot of teenagers did, and especially with the influence of rap and hip hop music and stuff. And it's really hard to make that distinction. And you're never going to be able to monitor everyone. You can't affect everybody's speech and how they choose to use words in what context and what's cool and what's not cool, what's hip now and all of that. You can't control it. So really all you can do is control your own reaction to it. how it affects you, how it makes you feel. What do you feel as a result of it? There are things that people would have said to me, and have said to me when I was younger, that, you know, I would just be running to the restroom to cry, or going somewhere so someone wouldn't see that I was totally crushed by what had been said to me. And it doesn't happen to me now because I view it differently. I view it from, you know, whatever you say it really doesn't necessarily define me, you know, and therefore I don't react to it in the same way, feeling bad, feeling put down, feeling diminished, or what have you. I do engage people about things that they say, and I want to find out, well, what was your intention for that? What I want to go follow that golden thread and see, can I find out whether should I have considered that to be a threat, that if someone will call me a name that is considered a derogative name or an epithet, should I be afraid then to be in that situation? Or was that just something that came out of ignorance and not knowing and not having a better understanding about how to interact with people? Yeah, I think there's just so much that has to do with this that we have to unpack about racism and our relationship. So one of the things that really I like is the fact that so many people and so many groups are having discussions about race, and that so many people are actually, even in the face of the national rhetoric that's going on, and the fact that we all are feeling extremely frightened that we now have supremacists and just all kinds of ogres, visions of ogres, and the different, you know, the fact that we perhaps could end up in an internment camp again. That this is the kind of rhetoric that's being spoken about at our national level, and that there's nothing that we seem to be able to do about it. I think the one thing that's heartening is so many people have taken to the streets, and that you feel not alone in objecting. But, you know, my message is always, you still have to go back to that honesty of what's inside of you, your personal self. You can say, my parents didn't teach me to be racist, I'm not a racist. Or my parents were racist, but I'm not a racist. You know, maybe it's, you know what I mean? There's just so many different situations. You can't make any assumptions, I think, about anybody, but you always have to understand when you might be in danger, because somebody harbors ideas that are completely you know, or go toward genocide, you know, die. You know, when people yelling these things out to people nowadays, to me that's very scary. Die. Or to, you know, if I meet someone and their hair is cut, like somebody was saying today that they had on TV who had a lot of bomb materials and stuff in their house, and that they were modeling themselves after Dylan Roof, the guy who went and killed 9 people in the church in Charleston, South Carolina. These are the things that concern me. You know, I'm not still, you know, I'm not afraid so much of people who don't understand the language that we use of sophistication to describe our racial relations. To me, it's about where people are coming from in their heart and how they express that, and the honesty that they are having within themselves, as I still have my own work to do in terms of being honest with myself about how I approach relationships with other people with whom I coexist.
I kind of would like to respond to the video.
Yes.
Because there isn't a single thing that's said about the Asians that I haven't experienced myself, and I'm sure you share the same thing. There isn't anything new I've heard on that video. I could recall when I was a young girl growing up and somebody made comments like bombs over Tokyo and things like that, asking my mother, because, you know, this doesn't mean anything unless it's personal, like it meant to you. And I said to my mom, this person, you know, was saying terrible things to me, and she said, "You're better than that." That was her answer. And I think this comes back to what you're saying. And it's real important for everyone to have role models. You are a role model as well as anybody else. I applaud when I see Asians doing well, or if they take office and I see that, because it's a role model. And I think that it comes back always to you first. And that's the important thing. Let's see, I think some of the other things that were brought up, even with Soledad's piece, it was only in the 1950s that I knew I know of couples who were Asian that married Caucasians that in California was against the law, so they had to marry outside of the state to come back to live in California. So it's not been that long that this is still in existence. And in answer to your question, why you didn't know only a few miles away, it was not in the history books. I recall when I was growing up and I was probably not able to read yet, I was probably around 6 or 7, I saw a picture book about the camps, and I said to my mom, I said, who are those people that look like me? What's wrong, you know? Because I couldn't read the text, and she's, you know, she kind of put it down because she didn't want to bring out all the ugly things that come out of that, you know. But the reason is because when I went to school, if there was any mention about the camps, it might be 2 sentences in a history book, and it never was brought up in your history class. So it really made you feel as if maybe that wasn't a very important event, and yet it was huge in our society, in our community. So, but at the same time, I have to admit, you know, you have to look at positive things, and I feel as if there's been a lot of gain, you know, over time, to the point where we were almost to the extreme. There was a period when Asians were considered model minority, which is still a stereotype that is not good either, because it's putting you in a box that may not apply. And so I still think that that's important. It still comes down to you and how you react and how you present who you are. So I think that's the most critical thing in any of this. And dialogue definitely helps with that. So.
That just reminded me of something that was in the first film that I kind of wanted to raise up again, and it's the idea that when the narrator was going through sort of the litany of ways in which the people had been discriminated against, she said there in America there was slavery, and then when she got to Germany, she said, and the German people discriminated against the Jewish people. And to me, that struck me both times that I saw the film. I watched it at home and I watched it here. Both times it struck me as underplaying the severity, just like you were saying, wasn't taken as a big deal. I mean, the Holocaust is a massive deal, but the film just kind of, and the German people discriminated against the Jewish people, didn't even begin to explain the magnitude of that. And that's another thing that this idea of truth-telling and that people's stories have to be told and acknowledged, and people have to feel that they've been heard and that their story is known. I think if we all sort of felt we were on the same playing ground and you understood everything about my history and I understood everything about your history, and we were all like moving forward, you know, as like equal people with this, but we know that our story is not a part of what people use as their sort of mechanism for deciding how to move forward, because they have not heard everybody's story. Until people feel that their story has been heard, then they continue to tell it, because they say you can't go forward until we at least acknowledge what has happened to me. And I think that's the stage that we've been in for a while here too.
So I work in the corporate setting, and it's a white man's world dominated by white men. So what can you do? So I've had a chance to at least try to hire a few people this past year, and there were no non-white candidates that our HR department brought to us, with one exception. There was an Indian American woman who was for one of the positions, and her qualifications weren't in line with a couple of the other good candidates, but it pained me because I really believe in diversity, and I made my own life around embracing diversity. I adopted an African-American child from the welfare system. I married an African-American man. And I'm open about those choices. And I admire everyone on the panel. I think you're all so courageous to convene the panel and to make this available. I think it should be on TV.
Take this on the road. A couple places we can set you up.
It's a shame that it's not more broadly known. The conversation has to happen. Over my life, I've come to feel uncomfortable when I'm around just an all-white group, because we do self-select, I think, as humans in the U.S., which is I think it's a salad bowl, not a melting pot. There's still subgroups. But my dad was an anthropologist, so I had the opportunity to be a minority for a year when I was 5 and see what it was like not to be the white privileged person, because we lived in Indonesia and all the other kids in my class were brown, and they would touch me because they'd never been up close to a white-skinned person before. I didn't like it. Who would want everyone in the class to be touching you? But it was an experience that came with me through to adulthood, of what it must be like to be outside the privileged mainstream. So another instance right now that pains me about our team, my company does prize diversity. We have very high-ranking women. They are mostly white women, but at least they're women, which is rare in corporate America. But we have a wonderful young black man who is on our team who's an analyst. And he's about to go off to a very prestigious business school. But we're going to lose him from our team. And that pains me, because he's been at least and the cliche is he's a token black on our team, but he's going away. So I hope that we can get more representation. One of my little victories with hiring was one of the people I did hire was a woman into a position in the Bay Area, which is of course a hotbed of diversity, probably the most diversity-oriented metro in the country, one of them, and we beat out a bunch of straight white guys who are very much part of the mainstream culture and business world, and she was championed by the head of our group, who is also a successful career woman, and so these little actions that I've been part of in a corporate setting are small, but they I think they're so important, because the power structure is still extremely dominated by white men, and the new cabinet under Trump is far more white male than we've seen for 50 years in the White House. So I think we can lose the gains that we've made. I think the term affirmative action kind of went away after the 80s. But it was there for a reason. It was hard won in corporate America and in the working world. All of us now face a technology onslaught which will displace millions of jobs. And most of the jobs that will be displaced are held by low-wage people, and many of them are non-white people. So again, the racial issue is going to surface in our economic reality. And the kind of nastiness we saw in the video at Target with the woman is only going to, I think, likely increase, because there's going to be more competition for the few jobs that are left in a technology rampant world. So I think we all have to be aware of preserving what's been hard won through the blood of those who fought for women's rights, for African American rights, Asian rights, for Hispanic rights, Native American rights, gay rights. I'm probably missing a couple of important groups.
Human rights.
Human rights.
Yeah.
Amen.
Thanks, Tom. So I'm going to refocus us just a little bit. There's still time for comments, but I'm going to refocus us on what can we do. There is another slide for that. What can we do?
May I?
You may.
All right, thank you. I want to thank you, brother, for what you're saying about doing something in your own personal life about this. And after that first video in the store, I feel I need to speak about the Latino situation today. You know, my mother's a very outspoken woman who's worked helping developmentally disabled children, over 2,000 families in Santa Barbara over 35 years. Fifth generation Californian, sixth generation at least American. And I mentioned this at an event I was at last night. She was at an art opening in Carpinteria, and she had a side conversation in beautiful Spanish with her friend that was there, and a man came up to her and asked her if she had her green card. And my mom was like, what? I mean, my mom was the chairwoman of the Community Action Commission here in town. So she did not keep her mouth shut. She said, excuse me? This man said, just used the excuse of, oh, well, you know, with what's going on in America nowadays, you can never be sure. And used it as an excuse of bigotry at the highest level, trickling down and making it permissible for people to act in that way. You know, in the month after Trump's inauguration, there were 800 hate crimes in schools. What affected me most about that is I've seen that kind of thing before, and I've felt it. I know what it feels like to have an elderly white woman hold her purse and walk to the other side of the street when she sees me walking down the road. You know, it's not a good feeling. And I'm a peaceful man. You know, I've been punched in the face, in the ribs, I've been spit on, and I've never struck back. So I don't think I carry an aggressive thing in my presence, but she was programmed in that way to fear what she saw coming. So it goes back to what you were saying, Sojourner. What affected me there, and what was most noticeable, was that no one spoke up. You know, we cannot enable these kind of things through silence. What we need to do is increase the social penalty on bigotry. Call people on it. Stand up for that person being discriminated against. Because if we stay silent, then we are guilty by association. And that's just right where it's at. You know.
Wide destination, which is people need to start running for public office. Because that's what that Tea Party did, that's what Republicans did, that's why they have so many governorships and run so many state legislatures. And it seems like in our time, with all the blowhards on a national level, more and more productive things are going to happen at the local and state level. And that's just the way it is.
But also how the game is rigged is that it takes money to run for office. So when you have a society where a certain privileged class has more, it increases the difficulty. I know, I agree with you. You know, I absolutely. Go ahead.
to make a change, a big change. But still, those who've got the energy and the willingness, who never would have thought of running for public office, now is the time for such people to say, yeah, I could run for the school board, etc.
And what we can do as individuals is encourage those people and help them and find ways for them to enter into the that arena. Yeah, you'd be great. I'd vote for you. Mark, you had something to say.
No, I was just looking at the list here and was thinking about what was it? Learn the language, and I think out of all the clips that we've looked at, and what from our meetings on this panel and the group, is that we talked a lot about language and having a conversation about what's going on, and I like what Sojourner was saying was about the attention behind the language that we're using. Even just tonight, I've heard words like token, and even though it's something that we may not be unconscious that we're using that word, but even that's separating by just saying oh, the token this, or and so I remember, just thinking about an experience I had a while ago, two experiences. I remember when I was living in Oklahoma, I was at my desk and I had the radio station on, and this was like a top 40 radio station, so they played a variety of everything, pop, and this song that happened to be on was country. And this lady walked by my desk and she said, "What are you listening to?" And I said, "Oh, just the radio." And she goes, "Oh, I didn't know black people listen to country music." And my comment was, "I love all music." And in the other situation, and she probably didn't know. She probably just didn't know that, I like all music, that we can like all music. And the other situation I was thinking about was I had a guy, he wanted to fist pump. He was like, "What's up, brother?" And I didn't respond. And he kind of looked at me and I said, "Am I really your brother?" I said, "You don't know me." But it was his way of being cool, and I had to, kind of educate him on. And I said, "How are you? What's your name?" So there was a way that, he was taught that, oh, because he's black and maybe what he's seen on TV and the messages that we get, and that are not right. I mean, even with the watching the Asian American, I was blown away by that, seeing that, and that could be anyone. I mean, that could be any race. But I have a friend that adopted two girls from China, and it's just remarkable being around them and getting to know them. And I'll see them this year, and it's amazing because I think about, wow, they're probably going to be experiencing, or they've already probably experienced some of those same things because they were adopted by a Jewish family. But, just thinking about their life. But going back to the language, I think, changing our language and how we talk to each other, how we're, expressing or talking about someone, is that, we have to, I guess, educate ourselves on that more, on the language that we're using. But it's also good that we ask the questions, like Tanya was saying, how do I refer to you? So that gets the conversation going. And then that helps you change your language, So anyway, that was it.
And tagging on to what you're saying, what everybody has been saying, and really what we kind of started out with is the whole idea of compassionate social justice. We can confront what we see happening right in front of us in a compassionate way. We don't have to, go knock somebody down because they're being inappropriate or they're saying the wrong thing or start yelling or start a fight. How do we do that compassionately? What does that look like? And I think that's the key in terms of what's happening in the world right now. That we're not going to solve this by fighting. We're not going to solve this by being angry with each other. We are going to solve it with love, and we're going to have to be compassionate and hold people accountable. You can't. I work in the mental health unit at Cottage Hospital, and I say stuff like, "No, you cannot act like that here. We don't allow that kind of behavior here." And it's really okay. It's what we do with our kids, right? We don't let kids just run amok and do anything. Well, I guess some people do, but I have a few words to say to them too. Yeah. So that's the key: compassion in our social justice. We have a question here, and who else had a question? Noel, did you have your hand up too? Go ahead.
I have an example of you saying, what can it look like? What can, in our family, I can tell you how it looks in our family. I came from very prejudiced mom and dad. When I brought home my black boyfriend at 18, we were both lifeguards together. I didn't see any difference. But my dad did, kicked me out of the house. So much for that. Many years later, my sister married a black man, and we had beautiful grandchildren, beautiful children. And then also years later, I moved to Hawaii. My father didn't like blacks, and my mother didn't like Japanese because of the World War II that she was brainwashed with. And I happened to fall in love with a really handsome Japanese Filipino man, and so I have beautiful Asian children. And so my mother ends up, she has no white grandchildren, but she's got these beautiful black grandchildren and beautiful Asian grandchildren. And you know, and when they're your grandchildren, what are you going to do? So prejudice here to have them out the window. Family.
Were you waiting to say something?
Please.
So that's what you can do.
What other ideas do people have?
Well, one of the things, and this is something that I've been working on personally, is my friend Sherry Gerst, who lives here in town, and myself started a group about a year and a half ago called Heart to Heart. And it's really about the same kind of thing we're doing here. It's about having honest conversations in a safe place, in a trustworthy place where you can ask, for instance, something that you were afraid to ask or afraid to mention, and not feel you're going to have some sort of reprisal because of it. Is to get the group to enough comfort level that we can say whatever's on our mind, even if we're afraid or have been in the past afraid of saying that. Honesty, honest heart-to-heart talk. And I think that idea of being able to have difficult conversations, or being able to speak up when someone else is being disrespected and you feel like you want to be an ally with that person. Sometimes you don't have the wherewithal to just jump into it. And that's why I think group discussions like this help us become more comfortable with the issue, and more comfortable, say, in a trustworthy circle, to say things that we've kind of been reluctant or afraid to say, that after you're able to discuss it in a safe setting, that then you might be able to bring it up in a setting where you're the only one there, but you still feel that sort of affirmation that you've had from the fact that you've said it in a group where you can trust the group, and nothing bad happened to you because of saying it. So I think it helps all of us to have these conversations and to work these things out. It's like work these talks out among ourselves. And then when we really do have to confront a racist or a bigot or sexist or whomever it is, that we feel a little stronger about it. And we know the language. We have the words for saying the things that we're trying to say. So I'm hoping that this is something, because there are groups all over town having these kind of conversations. Just Communities, a group in town. This is to talk about resources a little bit. Just Communities has a group called courageous conversations. And I think, that's the group that's just in the phone book, or you might know somebody who's there that you might want to find out about theirs. Our Heart to Heart group is starting a new 8-week group of discussions, and we don't really advertise. We might put it in a few newsletters, but we don't advertise because we're not trying to have a big public group. It's something where we want people to feel comfortable coming, where they will feel like they're not in a spotlight or, in the newspaper. It's a private conversation and a private art with about 10 to 12 people like this. And I think that even things like, going to City Hall and speaking on behalf of certain issues, I think a lot of us know how to do social justice work. A lot of times it's that interpersonal stuff where you're just not really sure. And really what it boils down to at the bottom, I think that's the one thing I want to say, is that it's about us wanting to be liked. And people say, I don't care whether people like me. Well, I feel that people do. So whenever someone is called a racist, it's that you think that they're bad. I think you're bad because I think you're a racist. And then people rebel against that and they push back against it. And so I think that whole idea is that we have to all understand that we all have our insecurities, that we all have areas in which we're not really able to talk that much about. And so this kind of stop holding it in and get it out and stand for what you believe in. And if the person next to your house gets burned down, stand with them or stand against the forces that are burning their house down. This silent acquiescence to this continuing racism year after year after year after year, it doesn't seem to make it much better as long as we continue to acquiesce with the status quo and, that's just the way things are, or that's the way people are. If we want it to be different, we have to make it different.
Amen to that. So I'm going to kind of wrap it up here. This has been a really good conversation. I think that the bottom line is that what we can do is be looking for opportunities to step into conversations, to step into groups, to step into just watch what's happening, because more and more and more people are wanting to have these kinds of conversations and these kind of get-togethers. So pay attention. Exactly. Have that intention. Have that intention. Well, I would just like to one more time thank all of our panelists tonight. Thank you so much for being here. It's been a wonderful evening. And thank all of you for coming out on a rainy Friday night. So thank you and good night.
And I want to appreciate everybody else who spoke from the audience.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. I forgot to say that we have these bumper stickers. This is one of the things that you can do. Get one of these bumper stickers, put it on there. It says celebrate diversity, and we certainly do here. So we have some of those in the back.
Yeah. Even if you don't put it on your car, put it on your refrigerator. Put it someplace where it's going to stir up a conversation. What is that? And then talk about it. Thank you, everybody.